recording. So as of right now, we are recording. So a little bit of housekeeping. You might want, because we're a very large group, you might want to set your view to speaker view. We are recording this meeting, and do feel free to add questions to the chat box. And I want to make sure you all know that the Environmental Internship and Career Fair is next Friday. So check it out on Gold Pass, February 5th. Great career fair. Many of you will be interested in the over 60 employers who will be there. So we are very happy and appreciative of our 3 panelists today. They have a wide range of experience related to environmental and sustainable careers, and they represent government, nonprofit, and the private sector. So you're going to hear a lot of really interesting information from them. And what we're going to do is get right into questions, and they will start by introducing themselves. So panelists, what I thought I would do is for each question, I would just ask one of you to start, and then please, the 3 of you jump in, free for all kind of conversation on each question, and then we'll move to the next question. And then a little bit later, we'll address Q&A that students will include in the chat box. Okay? Okay, great. So why don't we start? Leslie, if you wouldn't mind starting, that would be great. And the first thing that we would like to hear about from each of you is if you could introduce yourselves. So of course, your name, your title, your employer, and then a little bit about the work that you currently do. And if you've had a range of work experiences or professional experiences, we would love to hear a little bit about your history, knowing that one of the things students will really learn about today is the difference from one employer to the next and one job sector to the next. So take it away, Leslie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maggie. Yeah, my name is Leslie Brandt. I am a climate change specialist with the USDA Forest Service and the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. And our group works across the Midwest and Northeast United States to integrate climate change considerations into natural resource management. And we do that in a variety of ways. So we develop reports and assessments on how the climate is changing and how that affects forests and other ecosystems. And then we work with natural resource managers. So these could be people managing our state parks, our national forests, private lands, land trusts, a wide variety of organizations to integrate that information into their decision-making process. So it's really at that intersection of science and planning. And so I work for a federal government agency. So the U.S. Forest Service is part of the United States Department of Agriculture. And so there are a lot of opportunities in the federal government for this type of work in a variety of agencies. So I have people that do similar type of work in our agency that are in other regions. And then we collaborate a lot with places like the Park Service or the Fish and Wildlife Service, Environmental Protection Agency. So each of these agencies has its own mission, but we do have some shared goals that we work together on. And I'm also in the kind of unique position in that I'm part of this institute that works between a number of university partners, including the University of Minnesota, as well as Michigan Technological University, University of Vermont, Forest Service, and then nonprofits like American Forests is one of our big partners. My background is that I have a PhD in ecology from the University of Minnesota, ecology, evolution, behavior. I have a bachelor's degree in biology, and in between undergrad and grad school, I worked at the Chicago Botanic Garden in conservation science and that was like a field job where I was out and studying plants, and it was lots of fun. And then I did a variety of internships while I was a grad student in kind of that climate policy area, which is how I ended up getting hired into the federal government through a program called Presidential Management Fellows, which is a really great program for anyone who's finishing up a graduate degree. So you can apply when you're finishing a master's, PhD, or any other graduate program. So I'll turn it over to somebody else now.
Jillian, do you want to go next?
Sure. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Okay, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Jillian Hansen, and I am just honored to be here. Honestly, I just graduated in 2019, so I'm hoping to be able to provide you a little bit of a perspective of someone who is very new in the sustainability space. So please bear with me as I'm also still learning. But I work for a company called the United States Solar Corporation. It's based here in Minneapolis, and it is a community solar developer. So it is a solar developer, which builds projects and things like that, but we're very niche in that we focus in community solar markets. We started here in Minnesota, and that's really where we have our largest base, but we are expanding out into a lot of new markets across the country as community solar programs become a little bit more popular. And that's kind of where I fit in. I was hired and I worked when I initially started, I was working on our corporate side, kind of managing corporate partnerships. We work with Walmart, some regional grocery store chains, as well as we have a residential program, but I focused on the corporate piece of that. And in this next year, with a lot of legislative changes, I'm shifting into more of a market analyzing role and looking at how markets are changing in different states and how that affects our corporate subscription programs. And I was a graduate of the College of Liberal Arts with a political science degree and a global studies degree with a focus in sustainable development. And I also worked with Erica Teeley at the CLA Career Services Center. So definitely helped with resumes and cover letters and all that fun stuff. So hopefully that gives you a good overview. And like I said, I'm new, I'm learning, and hopefully can give you a perspective of someone who just has kind of dipped her toes into the industry and is looking at things. So.
Thank you very much, Jillian.
Thank you.
And how about you, Michelle?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, thanks. Thanks to Maggie and Erica for having me here. And it was fun to hear what you do, Leslie and Jillian. My name is Michelle Garvey. I am the Program Director of Environmental Sustainability at HECUA, which is an acronym for a very fancy title to a nonprofit. It is the Higher Education Consortium for Urban Affairs. And this nonprofit's been around for about 50 years, and we do deep dive semester-long programs with undergrads from all over the country, actually, but most do come from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. And we do deep dives into different social justice topics. And so I really run the Enviro Sustainability Program as an environmental justice program. It will soon be renamed Environmental Justice. And I also developed the only environmental justice class at the University of Minnesota, and I currently co-teach that this spring too. So please look into that if you're interested in the field. So as the director of this HECUA program, we run the program every fall and every spring. It's a 16 credit program, 4 different courses, and students get to encounter dozens and dozens of community experts in environmental justice, and you get to try out different field methods in environmental justice, and You also get to make a contribution. So we contribute scholarly labor and physical labor, depending upon the farm fields or solar fields or wherever that we're working. And almost every day we are interfacing with folks in the community. So it's a thoroughly community engaged and community driven kind of program. And I can talk more about that and opportunities in HECUA later for career development, but I took a long winding path to get here. I was a philosophy major in college, and after college, I worked in special ed. I worked as a naturalist. I did a lot of youth programming and education. And then I got into an AmeriCorps ecological restoration program, and I just fell in love. I totally fell in love with restoration, and it changed everything for me. So after that, I started working with Friends of the Mississippi River as a volunteer coordinator and education specialist. And after that, I also did an internship with the Women's Environmental Institute. And that's where I started meeting environmental justice, a representative, a state representative at the time, and a professor, Jackie Zita at the U. And she's the one who encouraged me to go into grad school. So I did that, and the rest is kind of history. I finished my PhD in feminist studies at the U of M, and I specialized in environmental justice the whole way, and I kind of had to craft my own program because it just doesn't exist, which is too bad. And ever since then, I have been teaching at the U and working as an educator with the Institute on the Environment, and I just recently started at HECUA. Thanks, Maggie and Erica, for having me.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We will talk a little bit later about the twists and turns that you all may have taken on your career journeys, because we know that sometimes they don't go quite as linearly as we all thought they would when we were in high school. So anyway, let's go on to our next question. Maybe Michelle, you could start this one. Can you talk a little bit about what students can do before graduation to learn about career options and to be ready for their job search?
Yeah, I would say reach out and connect. One of the problems, I think, with academia is that we have this false myth that you're really not valuable as a citizen or as a change maker without a degree. And that's ridiculous, and it's bogus, and it keeps people back from being active in their communities. And so one of the things that I try to do in my teaching is to plug students in to different organizations and different leaders and change makers, so that you are touching down and making those connections with people on the ground doing the work every single day, so that you've got a network of people before you graduate, and you've got potentially a resume of projects, also lines on your resume built before you leave college as well. Because I think we do tend to set our students up for failure when we don't engage with the community, with off-campus community. And that could be business, that could be activism and organizing, that could be a number of different ways how I'm using community. So my suggestion is to plug into campus student orgs and opportunities, get out of your bubble and plug into different activism and organizing in the greater Twin Cities area, because it's a really vibrant place to be and to activate yourself right now. You know, and again, there's so much about your growth and development is just getting to experience and try on different hats and figuring out what feels right and how you can leverage your skills and leverage your passions and figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. But it's really hard to do that when, you know, you graduate and you're kind of left with no relationships to kind of direct your path afterwards. So start building those now. And if you don't know where to start, reach out to a career specialist, or reach out to an advisor in your department, or reach out to a student org, because there are so many ways to plug in.
Jillian and Leslie, please jump in.
I'm happy to go. I think I have two pieces of advice when the question is asking what can students do before graduation. Obviously, working at career services, I'm going to plug that and say that that was an extremely beneficial resource for me that I kind of stumbled upon, honestly, with that job, and having such close relationships with the career counselors who are just great soundboards and great people to bounce ideas off of and really help you get a clear idea as you're trying to figure out what to do after graduating. Especially if you're someone like me who had my life planned from high school on, and I thought I had the idea of what I wanted to do. And then you start taking more classes and things start getting confusing and you're not able to have that clear path anymore. Taking advantage of those resources at the Career Services Center, or going to events like this and listening to other people and learning from other people would be my first kind of piece of advice. And then I think also something for me was a big change of perspective when I was looking at opportunities. As I said, I was someone who had my path figured out, and once I started to open up my idea of what I would have considered a fulfilling career and what I considered as a part of that path, I was a lot more excited about opportunities that I maybe hadn't considered in the past. So it sounds really vague. I don't want to get too much if we're going to talk about our path, but essentially just kind of changing that perspective and being open to learn about other things that you might not have considered, because sometimes a light bulb goes off and a whole new passion, comes to you. So I guess that's what I would say.
And yeah, I would echo a lot of what's already been said. In addition, I would highly recommend seeking out internship opportunities or other like summer positions where you can really sink your teeth into something over a longer period of time and develop those relationships and get paid usually. I would highly recommend seeking paid opportunities too, because I think there are a lot of paid opportunities these days. The Forest Service, for example, has a lot of summer positions that we hire every year. And if you don't know where to look for those positions, ask a professor, or you can reach out to me if that's something that you're interested in, and we can help direct you to the websites or the places where those things are posted, because it's very discipline specific, and oftentimes you're not going to find those opportunities necessarily on Indeed or some of those other giant job search engines, but they might be on a professional website for climate change adaptation professionals or for ecologists. And so by knowing what those discipline specific job boards are, that can open up a lot of possibilities.
Great, thank you. So let's go to our next question. Jillian, maybe you can start with this one. Can you say something about how students can be great applicants? So you've talked already about internships and reaching out, getting experience to introduce you to these fields. What can students do to make sure that their applications really rise to the top? What are you looking for when you're hiring stellar students, interns, staff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, unfortunately, the answer is going to be, a little different in every company that you apply for. But I think something across the board that I learned working at Career Services, as well as through my own application process, is doing research about the company that you are applying to and really trying to personalize your cover letter and your resume to what they are looking for. And that's not to say to lie on your resume and say you have a skill, but more so, you know, if they're looking for someone on their job description and they're looking for someone with good communication skills, make sure in your cover letter you're intentional about describing a personal experience that can relate to those different requirements. I think that's something that I really focused on. And when I was interviewing for the position that I'm at now, my now boss, one of the questions they had asked, you know, the general interview questions is, you know, how did you learn to be a good leader? That was something that I talked about on my resume or on my cover letter. And so they asked me, and my example was that I was a summer camp counselor for 3 years. That's not the most professional example, but I had related to her by saying, you know, taking care of 12 kids is a lot of responsibility and learning that at a young age. And she had 2 young children. So she was able to relate to me and be like, okay, you understand. So I think just focusing on that, you don't always need to have all of the academic things and skills that they're, you know, that's not always what they are focusing on, but being personable and looking at the mission of the company and how you can relate to that. I think that's what I would maybe focus on.
Yeah, we just went through a hiring process here this summer, and we had about 200 applicants for one position. And so when we're looking through all of these resumes, in order to get yours to stand at the top, there's a couple of different things. First of all, in a lot of organizations, especially in the government, human resources will first do a filter of what applicants are qualified. And so you have to make sure that you clearly state in your resume and your cover letter the qualifications that you have that meet those minimum required qualifications. Now, usually it's open to some interpretation, but in order to get through that first screen, you have to meet those minimum qualifications. Then everybody is kind of ranked in a semi-quantitative way based on certain criteria that are set up in the job description. So having your resume specifically relate back to each thing that's in that specific job description, and even using that specific language, because often human resources is doing it and not the hiring manager, is going to help you get to the point where the hiring manager is actually going to see your resume. And then after that, that's where the interviews and the personal stories become really important, but you want to make sure you get through that first screen. Now, that's not going to be the case in all places of employment, but in government and even in the university system, this is often the case. So it's important to also do your research on the type of resume they're looking for. So state and federal government will want really long resumes that describe exactly what you have done in your position and how many hours you worked and what your pay was and all of that stuff. Now, in the private sector, they often want like a one-page thing that's very, very concise. So it really depends too on where you're targeting.
I do not ever sift through application materials for hiring. However, as a professor, I probably write, a half dozen recommendation letters every year, and I have graded probably tens of thousands of papers by now and led quite a few writing intensive courses. So my advice to applicants, whether you're applying for a job or whether you're applying for graduate school, is to get your writing on point. And that just simply means getting eyes on your writing, shopping it around to your parents, to your roommates, to the writing center at the U, to somebody in your field, especially if you have a professor that you might be close with. Let them see your resume and help you with it. Let them see your cover letter, your writing statement. If you're interested at all in nonprofit work, or community organizing work, I would say really try to expand the breadth of your CVs and resume to include service and community engagement. As much as you might want to highlight your lab experience or your research publications, that service is a really big deal depending upon which different programs you might be considering getting into. I would also say it is much more effective, and I'm sure there's some debate about this, but it's much more effective to me to read a cover letter or a resume that shows me you're qualified rather than that tells me. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes on a resume you'll read, below a student's line, they'll say, key adjectives: motivated, diligent, self-starter, and that's all fine, but I think it's kind of a wasted line on your resume. What's really effective is when you show me you're motivated, because you've already got 3 lines on your resume that show us that you're a leader of UMN Climate Strike, or you co-published or co-authored something with a professor or whatever it might be. That already proves to me that you're motivated, right? Or if you're a self-starter, maybe that's the hook that you start with in your cover letter. So don't just tell the person that you are what you are, right? Or that the employer who you think you are. Show us, right? Prove it in the vignettes that you create in your cover letter, or prove it in the lines of your resume.
Such great input. Thank you very much. Students, you've been hearing now from our panelists. If you have questions that you would like them to dig into a little bit more deeply, or they've inspired a completely different question in you, feel free to write those in the chat box and we'll get to those in a few minutes. Okay, so next, Leslie, maybe you could start talking about what advice you have, actually what you're seeing in this economy, the COVID situation. So work is different these days in that we're working remotely, and the economy is a little bit more uncertain. So what are you seeing, and what advice do you have for students who want to make sure they're staying on track as far as their career goals go?
Yeah, well, I think it's actually a really exciting time to be in climate and environmental justice and in that world, because I feel like there's so much growth happening right now. So I'm actually seeing a lot of opportunities come up. And I actually think that COVID provides another opportunity for everyone, because so many positions right now are virtual. And so opportunities that you may not have considered before because they're in New York or San Francisco, all of a sudden now are tangible to you because you can do it from here or wherever you're from. So for example, we just hired a couple people in our group this past summer, and they are not located, they're working for Michigan Technological University, but neither of them are living anywhere near there. And we had applicants from all over the country for that position. And so it was great for us too, because we got a much richer applicant pool than maybe we would have in the past. And it's a great opportunity for people who geographically might be constrained. So I actually think that there are a lot of opportunities right now.
Michelle or Jillian? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree that it is the time to pounce with respect to climate action and environmental justice action, food justice action, water justice action. Not only because it is the right thing to do and we will all, we lose our future, we lose our home without it, which probably should be the reason that guides us all. But as Leslie was saying, this is actually lately a really generative and hopeful time, because all of a sudden pathways are starting to open and momentum is happening. People are getting hired for green collar jobs, and are finally, you know, scientists are being listened to again. Yay, you know. So there's a lot happening here. I would say to folks that are thinking about sticking around in academia and maybe getting a master's or a PhD, I tell students all the time, I think it would be irresponsible not to, depending upon which field you are involved in and want to go in, to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, because there's a good chance that staying in academia is going to be rough. It is a very rough, inaccessible institution. The jobs are scarce. Again, it depends on which field you're going into, but certainly it can be tough. And so make sure that you are funded if you go for a master's or a PhD. And that if you end up tailoring a project or a program to your first desire of staying in academia, that you also simultaneously tailor a project to be able to work outside of academia, and plug into labor in a different area, so that you don't end up with massive student debt and no job. So I hate to be Debbie Downer, but it's really rough. And I think that we all do a disservice in academia by encouraging our students to go into academia, even though you are super smart and talented and all hard workers. We have unfortunately crafted a really terrible institution here. So just go in with your eyes wide open and have a few plans for what to do with your education and how to apply your education.
Yeah, I think speaking as someone who is kind of going through exactly what Michelle just spoke about, I was a student that when I entered the U, I thought I was going to go straight into grad school, and that was my path. And I still have these desires to explore academia and would love to go back, but being in the workforce and kind of being on the outside and looking back and staring down, you know, thousands of dollars of student debt when I'm in a career that I'm also able to learn and prosper in, has definitely been a change of perspective for me, that you don't always have to be learning in an academic setting, and kind of changing that mindset has been really eye-opening to me. And I would say working in the renewable sector was not something that I thought I would be doing. I really wanted to go into corporate sustainability. And I'm kind of now on the flip of that. I'm working with people who are working in corporate sustainability. And so it's been an extremely beneficial way to learn about that, so that when I maybe do get an opportunity to do that, you know, maybe I don't have a higher ed degree, but I have a lot of experience elsewhere. So kind of with that plan A, plan B, plan C, I'm kind of in the middle of that. And it's very real, but an exciting time to be in renewables, absolutely. I encourage you all, if you haven't considered a career in renewables, you don't need to be an engineer. There's a lot of opportunity. There's marketing opportunities. There's, you know, so many different ways that you can be involved in the industry, that it's really exciting and growing. So highly recommend if you have any specific questions about the industry. I'm not an expert at any means, but I can hopefully maybe get you connected with different, you know, positions or people to talk to.
Thank you all so much. Wow. I expected the COVID and rough economy question to be a little bit tough, or the answers to be a little bit tough. And instead, what I hope you're all hearing, students, is the optimism, really, and inspiration. So much opportunity. So thank you very much, panelists, for that perspective. So you've all touched a little bit on the fact that our career paths are not necessarily linear. Usually they are not. and having alternate plans. So could you say a little bit more maybe about your own paths and whatever other additional advice or ideas you have for students as they prepare for what probably will be circuitous routes to wherever they land? Michelle, do you want to start with that one?
Oh boy, that's a big question, and I think if I answered it, I would bore you all for hours and hours. I guess I would just say that there was a turning point for me in maybe my mid-20s after I had graduated undergrad, where I was informed, or it dawned on me, that I didn't just have to be an environmentalist, or I didn't just have to be a social justice activist, that as Van Jones says, I've got two arms and I can hold everything together, right? And this was before I learned about intersectionality and the nature culture dualisms. But falling into environmental justice changed my whole perspective, because I really understood that in fighting for people, I was also fighting for planet, and in fighting for planet, I was fighting for people, and that the two can't be separated. That happened a little bit in my restoration work. It really happened in learning about ecofeminism. A coworker of mine passed me a book on ecofeminism, and that changed everything. So it sent me down this path really of not only learning in school, but organizing. I've just been organizing with so many grassroots initiatives. And it's just been super empowering and educational and hope inducing. I tell a lot of people that, even during the Trump regime and some super dismal, hard times, which many of which are lasting and continuing, that no one can tell me that that there isn't hope, because I see the exact same EJ organizers showing up every single Sunday to make work, to make progress, to make change happen. I see the same people on the front lines of line 3 every single weekend. People show up. And so that's why I really encourage students to show up, not only to get the work done, but it also keeps your heart afloat, and it keeps your mind afloat in the face of some really scary realities these days. So Maggie, I bet that wasn't the answer you were looking for, but I've had so many jobs, and I've tried on so many hats to get to this point in life. I recently turned 40, and I would say it's taken me this long to actually realize a place of total job fulfillment. It's been a really long, hard road to hoe. And so it didn't come right away for me. And so, maybe my advice is just to be open to trying on those different hats, and to failing and succeeding and then failing again, and finding your path over a couple of decades.
That is the perfect response to that question, Michelle. And Leslie and Jillian, I'm sure your responses are equally perfect. So thank you.
All right, I'll go here, I'll try. Well, one piece of advice I got as from one of the chiefs of the Forest Service, when I started my position, we had this orientation with the chief of the Forest Service, and we got to ask him questions about career stuff. And he said to be a sailboat and not try to be a motorboat. So going with the flow of letting the winds kind of take you where they're going to go, versus trying to push yourself in a certain direction. And I would say that a lot of what I have done is kind of fallen along that sailboat idea. I went into undergrad as a biology major, thinking that I was going to study like neuroscience or something like that. And I realized after taking a class on that I did not like neuroscience. But what I was really excited about was environmental science and ecology. And so I reached out to some professors and asked about opportunities where I could learn more, started doing undergraduate research and internships, and then kind of went along that path thinking that the path was going to lead me to being an ecology professor. And I wanted to be just like my ecology professor that I had as an undergrad. But as Michelle said, there are not a lot of those positions. And I even didn't apply for those types of positions because I eventually realized that that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. So about halfway through grad school, I realized that I was not interested in being an academic. And so I started applying for opportunities to learn more about government and climate policy, science policy. I did a semester-long program with the National Academy of Sciences where you learn all about science and technology policy. And I used that opportunity while I was in DC to meet with all sorts of people that were doing cool work. And I learned about this Presidential Management Fellows program through that experience and applied. And then I got to be a finalist, and then you could pick like an agency to work with. And the Forest Service was not on my radar screen at all. And I just happened to see this position that was based in Milwaukee. And I was from Milwaukee, and I was like, all right, it looks cool. And so I took the job, and I didn't really know what to expect. And over the last, I've been in that position almost 12 years now. I've since moved back here to the Twin Cities, but all the while kind of building this career, and even within my position, taking different trajectories. So now I'm doing a lot of work in urban ecology and urban forestry, which is not something I studied in school at all, but I'm really excited about it because I love that it's at that intersection between, you know, the social and ecological sciences, and it's nothing I ever thought I would do, and I so love it so much. So just be a sailboat. It's my advice.
I love that advice. I think that's super cute. I'm going to say my piece here is probably going to be shorter just because I don't have as much amazing experience as the other panelists do. But I definitely think that something that has really changed in me over this last year with having to work from home and not having, you know, kind of that fun atmosphere of being in the office and having those coworkers that you can, you know, talk with and go out with after work, and having those things that kind of socially build you up. I've, you know, sit at my desk in my bedroom all day, and it's really caused me to kind of like dig deeper and to think about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I guess I just say that as like a piece of encouragement if you're feeling discouraged and, you know, looking post-grad and, you know, having to do all the applications for jobs. And I was rejected time after time and went through countless interviews that then didn't hear back from. And I just encourage you to be open to opportunities. Maybe you're not going to get exactly what you thought you were going to be doing, but if you approach that with an open heart and an open mind, and you approach that with the understanding that if you're going into a field that you're passionate about, that passion can really carry you through further than you think it can. And so that would be kind of something. And then another thing is people want to help you more than you think they do. As a student, I was so nervous to ask for informational interviews or to reach out to people, ask them to put a good word in for me. But I mean, when you're on the opposite side, I've never really met anyone that doesn't want to help other people succeed. So this is a little off topic, but just something to remind yourself that if you are in that opportunity to take advantage of it, the worst thing someone's going to say is no, and that's really their loss. You know, passing up an opportunity to help someone else. So that was something I struggled with a lot my senior year, and I hope that you are able to recognize that, especially now. I think there's just a camaraderie of people wanting to help each other, especially in this industry.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaking of helping, this has been so helpful. Perhaps we can conclude this portion of the program with your advice. One more way to help students. What advice do you have for them, or what is the one message that you would like to leave our participants with today, our attendees? Leslie, do you want to start with that?
Sure, I can. I would say don't be afraid to reach out to somebody if you think they have a cool job or are doing cool work. Almost anybody will be willing to have a short conversation with you, just an informational interview. And it could lead to a job or an internship or just more learning on your end. So I know sometimes people look fancy and scary, but they're really not. So please reach out. And us old folks are not as scary as some people think we are. Because I don't feel like an old person, you know?
I guess I can go next. Again, speaking from a place of, I'm new to this. I guess the one thing that popped into my head when you asked for our last piece of advice, I think is that the cliche of like, no one knows what they're doing is 100% real. Like adults that I work with who've been in the industry, for decades longer than I have, they still don't know what they're doing. And it's scary on one point, but it's once you kind of just like understand that, it really is liberating. So if you're feeling underqualified and you're feeling like scared or you don't know enough, no one knows what they're doing. And we're all learning together. So that's what I have.
I think that's super good advice on both counts. And I don't have anything brilliant or new to add. Just to echo something that we talked about in the beginning, which is that you are valuable right now with what you know and what you experience and what you have to offer. You are wise, and you have something to contribute right now. The degrees that you have set out to achieve are fantastic, and they will likely open doors for you that other people don't have access to opening. Leverage it. Like that's power that you have. You're earning some of it and some of it is unearned because of your social location, but like regardless, it's power and you can make something with it. So I would maybe to like add on or rephrase to what both Leslie and Jillian had to offer, that I think especially in enviro fields, like there's definitely this feeling or this sentiment that we're all in it together and that it is time to show up. And so when there are students that, or just people interested in the industry that you're in or the field that you're in, when students reach out, it's very true. Like we want to be there to help, to mentor, to help open those doors. So, and to like see you lead. The thing that keeps me coming back as a teacher every single day is my like unabiding faith in you people, because the folks that I get to work with in class every day are so much smarter and wiser and have more motivation than anybody I went to school with, 20 years ago. And so I'm ready to pass the torch to you people and have you step up and lead and get some of these old white guys out of power, and old white women too. So I'm here for it. We're ready for you to pounce. You just need to step up and reach out, okay? And listen, if somebody slams the door in your face, that's their problem, right? Like, they were never worthy of you in the first place.
Wow. I'm so inspired and feeling so optimistic myself. So thank you all so much for sharing with our students today. So you all in the audience, what questions do you have? Either jump into the chat box or you can raise your hand. And let's talk a few more minutes. Erica,
Yes.
do you?
Yes,
Why don't-
please let us know what questions you have. I can give you a moment to type it out, or you can raise your hand. I've been trying to monitor. I don't see the hand raises, but if they are, you can also just unmute yourself and start speaking to ask a question directly to any of the panelists. And also, I would encourage you all, if you haven't already, to be looking at the chat. There have been some great suggestions in there as far as student groups you can join, and other suggestions and links that the panelists have given that Maggie had shared regarding federal employment, because it does look a lot different as well. So what are your burning questions that you can guess? Oh yes, and that's the question I was gonna ask. Are all the panelists, if you're willing to either add your email or your LinkedIn links, please add them in the chat so that the individual students can follow up if you're comfortable with that. That would be great. And what was I going to say? Okay, so here's a question from Brooke. Do you have any advice on how to navigate the sustainability industry if you're not necessarily an environmental science major? It sounds like Brooke is a computer engineering major. So what pieces of advice do you have for someone who's not in and Jillian, yeah, why don't you answer?
Yeah,
experience.
so I mentioned I was a political science and global studies major, so pretty far from environmental science or anything sciencey. I was not interested in. And so I was the person that made the jokes that I was a political scientist when all my science friends would talk about things. And so that's kind of what I was talking about being open to trying new things. When I applied for the position that I am in, it was a bit more of like a kind of sales focused position, which is not something I ever saw myself doing. And after about a year of working there, I had learned enough to know where I had my strengths in this industry, and was able to talk to my boss and really kind of create my own position and find my own value at that company. That's more about, analyzing markets and more about policy and legislation. So, not kind of saying, might have to kind of pivot from what you're thinking, but being open to those opportunities and seeing where they might take you. That's kind of how I ended up where I was. And hopefully that can be helpful for you as you're looking at careers. And there are opportunities out there. You just maybe have to be willing to take a risk outside of your comfort zone a little bit.
And Leslie has added too, there's a lot of computer folks doing web development, application development. And I think sometimes it's very easy to compartmentalize certain opportunities within those industries, right? But you can do those things across the board, like Jillian said, marketing within that, or with Leslie with web development, because someone's got to be creating those things and have a heart for it and have that perspective as well, which is really important. Okay. Anyone else? Any of the other panelists have anything to add? Okay. And then Maggie did add the link for the environmental career fair. So look at that in the chat. And Zach asks the best advice for an environmental career fair. Have any of the three panelists been on the tabling? Jillian, you have?
Yeah, well, attending the career fair, I attended both the university-wide one as well as the environmental career fair when I was a student. So not advice from the other side of that. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to participate in the last year. But as I kind of said at the beginning, doing research on the companies, knowing who's going to be there and prepping beforehand, knowing where you want to go, especially at the university wide career fair, it is huge and overwhelming when you walk into that room. But if you have a plan in front of you and places you want to talk to, it makes it so much easier, and you kind of have a goal and a checklist, and it's really helpful and it helps you relax. So that would be my advice.
Leslie, have you been on the other side of it? We've been talking to students.
I have not been at the career fair, no, but we've, I've been on the side of hiring students before, and definitely, reach out to me if you're interested in a federal career, forest service career. There's a lot of opportunities there, and I'm not sure if anyone from our agency goes to that one. Maybe one of my colleagues does.
Thank you. Another question from Kristen is, what kinds of jobs or internships do you recommend we pursue now as undergrads? And I think, Michelle, you're really uniquely situated to answer this question with all your work with HECU and sustainability, since there are so many great experiential components to that.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, we interface with a different community expert, whether it's a scientist, an artist, a dancer, a doctor, a professor, a writer. I mean, I try to show students the breadth of the field. But a part of every HECUA program, and I'll just put it in the chat, the Enviro program at HECUA that I run, is an entire internship course. And so what we do, and this is kind of cool, because at HECUA, there's a person whose entire job it is to help situate you with a mentor, with an internship and a mentor that is mutually beneficial. So you're laboring for them and they're laboring for you. And that could mean that you're working in solar, like Jillian. It could mean that you're working in enviro policy at the Center for Earth, Energy, and Democracy. We've got several students interested in regenerative agriculture and urban farming. So they're working with Growing North or Project Sweetie Pie, or they're working at Lily Springs Farm, or they're working with Tamales y Bicicletas. Let's see, we've got folks doing policy work and pipeline resistance work with Min 350. The sky's kind of the limit, and we really try to work to figure out what are your personal goals, what are your career goals, and then partner you with someone in law or policy or farming or activism, whatever it is. And then you complete, it's 8 to 10 hours of work a week during the pandemic, and 15 to 20 in non-pandemic times with that organization, and you earn 4 credits of class, or 4 credits for the course in the program. And there's little assignments along the way, but it's just a really deep experience that gets you that networking and gets you the line on your resume, so that you are kind of ready and prepared to go upon graduation.
Thank you. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're hitting it at 5:30, which feels a fortuitous timing to end. I hope you all have heard messages that there is no one path, that there are so many great opportunities to get to where you're going in this field of sustainability. And I want to say thank you to all of the panelists, to Dr. Michelle Garvey, to Jillian, and to Leslie for taking the time to share their insights with us. It has been very valuable. I hope it is for you as well. And as you heard directly from them, it is important to network and make connections. And as they've shared their contact information, be sure to follow up. So thank you all for your time, and have a wonderful evening. And I hope you all